flipped the script and broke the mold that was holding me back from taking flight. Now I'm doing okay, yeah, I'm doing alright.
Welcome and thanks for listening. This is Voices Amped. I'm Ellie Clark and I will be your host today. I am super excited to introduce to you one of my best friends and my partner in crime, Vanessa Becker Weig. For those of you who don't know, Vanessa is originally from Central Ohio, Springfield. She earned a BFA in acting from Wright State University. She moved to Lexington, Kentucky 11 years ago. It's so hard to believe, which is when we first met. She is co-founder of the Girl Project, for those of you who don't know, and has acted for program director of the Girl Project for the past 5-6 years. She was education director for Woodford Theater for almost 5 years before becoming artistic director prior to the pandemic. The pandemic definitely cut that short. She has created and developed a plethora of programming for young artists, the most recent being the Woodford Theater Young Artists, a very successful program at Woodford Theater. Vanessa has directed and choreographed or performed in over 150 plays. She has directed several award-winning productions for the iTheatrics Junior Theater Festival in Atlanta. She served for 10 years as the education director, a resident director, and actor for the Phoenix Theater in Columbus, Ohio, which is now known as CATCO. She received a Bluegrass Alliance for Women Impact Award in Lexington. She also received the prestigious Freddie G. Fellowship from Music Theater International. She has 2 children, Emma, an alumni of the Girl Project, and Jackson. She also has a stepson, Ethan. Vanessa loves to dance. She loves to sing. She is the epitome of a musical theater geek. She lives her life in a musical theater world. She loves Halloween and likes sleeping in haunted places, which I cannot understand. She loves storytelling, which is why she is such an incredible creator. Her favorite color is purple, for those of you who don't know. She performed a few times in a burlesque show called Miss Kitty's Hot Box, which I can't wait to hear more about. She's a Pisces. The sign is 2 fish swimming head to tail. Element is water. And she believes that the only map that you need in life is knowing your astrological sign. And so an important note to add is that her husband is a Virgo and he is a grounding force for her. Did I miss anything? That's a lot.
It is a lot. I don't think so. I think that covers most of the highlights for sure.
So how have I known you? How long have I known you? 8-9 years. And I don't know about Miss Kitty's Hot Box. I don't think you've talked about it with the Girl Project. What is this?
No, I haven't. It's my scandalous part of my life that I've been pretty guarded about who knows about it, to be honest with you. But all that is to say, I had several friends that were in Miss Kitty's Hot Box, which is a burlesque show in Columbus, Ohio. And I was going through a particularly, I think it was not long after I had Jackson, maybe. And, I was kind of going through that mom stuff, mom blues. And a couple friends of mine, they were like, well, the best way for you to feel your womanness again is to get up on stage and do burlesque. And I'm like, oh. And they made me feel so good. They're like, you're so sexy, and you've got all the curves in the right places, and we can do magic. We can make you feel great. And the thing about burlesque is that it's all about the tease. You really aren't showing anything,
Right.
but it's all about the tease. And so they were doing a Christmas show, and it was it was raising money for a woman's shelter. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to do this. So I sang, cause I'm a woman, WOMAN. I sang that song, and I sang, what are you doing New Year's Eve? And for what are you doing New Year's Eve, I did this whole thing like behind a curtain and stuff. It was really fun. really fun. And for I'm a woman, I was dressed all as like a man with like a hat and a tie. And then I, took the tie off and went down to something respectable and like a bathing suit. And I'll tell you, it felt so great. I'm not gonna lie. When it was done, I felt so empowered and good about myself, and just like I'll never do it again. But I felt so brave, and I needed it desperately at that moment in time. So there have been a few times in my life where these performances have come up just when I needed them, just when I needed that little boost to make me feel great. I have another one that happened in Lexington, that it made me feel great to be able to do that role.
Which one?
Oh, Paulette in Legally Blonde.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that was so fun. That was a great show.
It was fun. It was a lot of fun. And I think that it also came at another time in my life. I was, going through a divorce and just was like, oh, who's ever going to want this 40-year-old woman with like a teenager? And getting cast in that show, I was shocked. Like, I'm like, why should I even audition for Legally Blonde? And then I did more
Mm.
research and I was like, oh, this is why. And so I was really pretty surprised and wasn't sure that it was something I wanted to do. But man, I had the best time and I needed it so badly. And I felt great doing it every night.
Yeah, that's great. Do you have is there, you're talking about Miss Kitty's Hot Box and Paulette in Legally Blonde being um, game changer moments because of where you were in your personal life. Do you have a role that was your favorite role because of the skill it required and the challenge it required as an artist? Like, I know.
I do. And it's definitely, it's the opposite of Paulette was one of my favorite roles to do just because I had so much fun. But there was a role shortly before I left Columbus that was the most challenging thing I've ever done. And when I was doing it, I'm not going to lie, I was not having a good time because it was really hard and challenged me in a way that I'd never been challenged before. And it wasn't so much about kind of like in-depth characterization and trying to find all of that and that being what was challenging. It was that it was for a while, the company I worked for, we did several productions that included both deaf and hearing actors. We did The Secret Garden. We actually took it on tour, and that was really exciting and beautiful. And I think the most complicated part with Secret Garden is that I was also the choreographer as well as being in it. And I used to get yelled at by the interpreter because she would say, well, your signs are too fancy. You're making them look too dancy. And so she would be like, so when you do that with your hands, it's like you're mumbling on stage. So I learned a lot about signing during that and calming my little extra flares down. But then shortly after, I had enjoyed that so much. Shortly after that, I think a year or so after, we did The Miracle Worker.
Mm.
And I it was with both deaf and hearing actors. So all of the deaf actors, we were paired with them. So I was the voice of Annie Sullivan. So there's all the difficulty that goes into the syntax of sign language compared to the English language. They don't match up. So there's already it's just so complicated to make sure that you are matching up with your partner. But I also played a role as well. So I was Annie's voice, and then I played the role of Aunt Ev. And there was a scene where I had to be Aunt Ev in the scene and voice Annie at the same time. So there's a point where I'm playing two characters, and there's a point in the scene where they were talking to each other. So I had to sit, yes, I had to sit at this table And my back was to the audience when Annie was talking, and Annie has one dialect and Aunt Ev has a different dialect. So I'm talking as Annie's talking out towards the audience. And then I, as Aunt Ev, whenever I talked as Aunt Ev, I couldn't have my back to the audience because I had to sign at the same time. So I had to turn and I had to speak as Aunt Ev in a different dialect, a totally different vocal quality I had created for her, totally different physicality, sign as Aunt Ev, turn back to voice Annie with Annie's dialect, Annie's vocal quality, my body completely in neutral so that people wouldn't look at me. And I remember during rehearsal, I was sitting on this stool and the stool was sticky and I couldn't move. And the director was getting frustrated with me and I'm just like, I'm doing the best that I can. But I have never felt so, by the time the process was all over and we did the production, it was great. It got a bunch of awards and everything. I felt so accomplished after that, but I was ready to throw in the towel. Like that stool that I was getting stuck on during rehearsal, I was ready to throw it across the room and be like, see you, bye, I'm done.
Yeah, that sounds like it would be impossible to maintain your acting values and all the work of staying out of your head and not going into your head because you're dealing with so many technical aspects. That
Yes,
sounds like a nightmare.
it was a nightmare. Once I got it into my body, though, then I was able to really, focus in on the listening and responding and not worrying about signing. And I think we did something like, I don't know, 40 performances of that. So by the time I got to performance 40, I I knew what was going on.
Well, yeah, and that's interesting too because I think a lot of your background in theater is movement based, not to mention you're a dancer and choreographer. And that I think, for me, having something in my body, having something physically that I'm doing to keep me in the moment is really useful. I would assume it's similar for you with your background in Laban and Kabuki and some of the training you've done. Can you tell us a little bit about your background in movement?
Well, so I had this favorite professor that I hope he listens to this. I'm going to make sure that he's listening to this. Bruce Cromer, and he was a life changer for me. Not a life changer, but a career changer, let's say. Once you get to your field of study and you get all of these tools, which is something I talk with my students about right now. It's like you're going to get all of these tools. Sometimes they're even going to be contradicting. You're going to get all this advice and you stick it in this toolbox and maybe there'll be a role that comes along that you can dig in there for that tool. But Bruce was all about talking about that, and his major tool that he taught besides Shakespeare, which I did not connect with as well, was Laban. And it's just I connected to it so much because it all of it made sense in how to dissect body language.
Mm.
And I love, 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 love studying body language, not just Laban, but I love viewpoints and Suzuki, and I love all of those because they're the study of rhythms and language and how the body moves. And part of that is because of I started all this as it with dance training, so that's part of it. And I have always been a learner who I learn through movement. Instead of reading something and doing it, it's like I need to read it and then do it as I'm reading it in order to figure it out. That's just the type of learner that I am. But Bruce inspired me so much, and he used Laban in Shakespeare and in really every class that I had with him. It always had a presence. And then I just continued, and I trained a little bit more when I was in Chicago in Laban, and it's just something that settles in with me. It totally clicks in. It makes sense. Thinking about how you can break down a monologue even and use Laban as tactics figuring out how to make a piece of music dynamic, you can use it. So I'm
Mhm.
just, I'm a huge fan of it. I think that everyone should study Le Bon. Everyone, not just actors.
Mhm.
Honestly, because it does kind of, if you observe your movement qualities, you can learn a lot about yourself just through studying how you move.
Right.
I think that answers the question.
Yeah, it would be nice during a pandemic if everybody had viewpoints training, right?
Yes.
That is not
Yeah.
6 feet. You have
That's
no
so
sense of
true.
personal space. That's just basic movement. That's not really viewpoints, but that's
It
basic,
is.
basic
It is. It's
circle.
just like you cannot gauge how close you are to me right now. I think you need to come train with us, please.
Yeah, absolutely. So, why theater? Why, as you talk about your favorite roles and your movement training and background, how did you find theater, or how did it find you, and why has it become this lifelong passion? I mean, I think a lot of times with our work, the administrative becomes overwhelming, but the truth of the matter is you are living something and making a career out of something you're super passionate about. So how did it capture you, and why have you kept moving forward with it?
Well, it's interesting because my family, it's kind of a joke because my family are like, we're not sure where you got this from. My dad always talks about how he went to the school of heel toe dance training. And not really so
Funny.
much a singer or anything like that. And my brother is a high school football coach, and like we're polar opposite. And I really don't have anyone in my extended family. I started off, like I said, when I was little, going to little Sani School of Dance, and I loved tap dancing specifically when I was little. And then by the time I got to high school, I was on the drill team. And so I kept dancing on the drill team, but then I started auditioning for shows mostly because of dance. But
Mm,
then once I started doing shows in high school, I think the first kind of real play that I did was the Glass Menagerie, Laura and the Glass Menagerie. And then I was like, oh, this this is the real stuff. Okay.
mm,
And so then I just, kept doing shows in high school. And there was a community theater in Springfield that I was cast as Emily in Our Town. And I know some people are like, Our Town, but I have such a soft spot in my heart for Our Town because that is when it was my senior year in high school. I wasn't positive. It was right at the beginning of senior year. I wasn't positive that I was going to go into theater, but Our Town solidified that. I worked with this director that was very much about the spiritual connection to a character. And so I was really introduced to some new things that I was like, oh, this is really deep. And so I decided that I wanted to go ahead and audition for theater programs. I also auditioned for dance programs.
mm.
And frankly, uh, theater programs were willing to give me more money. So also the dance programs, to be honest with you, I could go off on a whole tangent about this, but the dance programs, I was what is small for me, like 100 and like 35 pounds maybe, when I was auditioning for the dance programs, or maybe even less than that. And, I was overweight. I was very overweight for a dancer. And they made that pretty clear, that I didn't have a ballet body, and I was super muscular and everything, but I didn't have that like long, lean look that they were all looking for. And I got into some programs, but there was even a program that was like, well, we'll accept you, but you've got to lose 15 pounds. So I was like, I think I'm going to do theater.
I think no. Yeah. Yeah.
So but then once uh, college happened, it just became life. It became my life. And the people that are involved in theater, they're crazy, and they can be competitive, and they can be backstabby and all of those things, but then they can also be the most loving and empathetic, joyful people to be around. And I have had trouble my entire life thinking about not being part of that. It's just ingrained in my system. And then once I had my own children and they became indoctrinated with it too, I don't think that there's anything else that I know there's other things we can do, but I don't think there's anything else I want to do. My father keeps telling me, well, you should be a project manager. You're just so good at managing projects. And I'm like, but not projects I don't care about.
Yeah, I could manage that project, but do I want to? And I think any career you're going to find competitive, backstabbing,
Yes,
selfish people. So that's going to be anywhere.
it
So,
is.
but the good stuff.
It is. And theater people, as I, really, since I've moved to Lexington, and I think once I moved to Lexington, I definitely started to shift towards this theater for social justice. And the more people that I learn about and learn from since I've had that shift, it's like now I definitely want to keep going with those people that I'm learning so much from.
Right. So as we were creating this podcast and vision boarding and dreaming up our guests, we thought maybe it was a good idea to do these introduction interviews with our leadership team, so that our listeners could say, who are these women that are saying, listen to my podcast? There's a lot of podcasts out there, but most of our listeners will know that we co-founded the Girl Project together. And in 2012, we met at a coffee shop. I had just moved back from New York City after 10 years, and you had just moved up from Ohio because your then husband had a job shift to Lexington, Kentucky. And maybe you can talk a little bit about how you found your way to Kentucky Conservatory Theater and Trish Clark, and how you ended up teaching there. But we sat down after doing Pride and Prejudice together and said, we want to do work that makes a difference. Art makes a difference already. Storytelling, empathy, bringing community together. But we wanted to bring more advocacy to our work with the story of young girls and the experience of young girls. So, what made you say yes to this project? Why was this project important to you? We didn't know what it was when we started it, so it's hard to say why was it important to you, because we made it something that then became important to us. But what excited you about doing a project like this and moving into more advocacy with your educational work, your theater education work?
Well, there were lots of things that excited me about it. When I first moved to Lexington, I really had no idea what my place was going to be. For the first time, I have been blessed to consistently work in theater in one way or the other. I really have. There's just been some in between times where I've, waited tables or worked in retail or whatever. And certainly, sometimes where I was trying to act and do all those things when I lived in Chicago. But I've been really fortunate to have some long-term jobs in theater education. So when I moved to Lexington, it was really the first time, probably 12 years, that I really didn't feel like I had a place. And I moved here for my ex-husband. And so I kind of started looking around and trying to find my place. And I, had a little stint at some place that is no longer anymore for a little while. And it wasn't really, it was with Balagula Theater. And while they did, some great work, it definitely was not exactly the right fit, and education has always been just that's what's all over my resume. It's my passion. I love it. So everyone I met, including the people at Balagula, said, you have got to meet Trish Clark. So I went in and I went to Trisha's office at UK Opera Theater, and I introduced myself and I plopped my little folder down on her desk and said, I hear I'm supposed to meet you. So, and we hit it off immediately. And Trish Clark being Ellie's mother. And she talked, of course, about both you and Emily. And I saw your headshot. I just will always remember seeing your headshot behind her. And I was like, oh my gosh, she's so pretty. And then, yeah, so I immediately just, Trish and I connected. And I was like, oh, okay, this is a woman who is doing the type of work that I'm really interested in. And she talked about Kentucky Conservatory Theater. And then, I gave her my resume and everything. And then she asked me to teach that summer. And then that was also the summer that we did Pride and Prejudice together. And of course, that too was another catalyst for me finding my place in Lexington. Everybody, that we were all so tight in that production, and Sully was such a great director and really helped us to all bond as a cast. And so that truly, I talk about it all the time, how that show was where I found my Lexington family. So yeah, so I was willing to do anything Trish wanted to put in front of me, not to mention the immense amount of respect that I had for you, watching you develop Elizabeth Bennet and getting to take that journey with you on Pride and Prejudice, and knowing, like, watching your teaching style, and just knowing that this could be an incredible partnership. Again, not knowing what the Girl Project was going to be, just knowing that you and I were having a conversation about what more can we do with our art. And I knew that I wanted it to be something that was going to help my teenage daughter, who had just finished middle school, and that middle school was absolute hell for her. And watching her go through all of the things that I had gone through, and just knowing that there's a place here for me, for us to make a difference and to empower young girls, and while doing that, learn a lot about ourselves and empower ourselves, and be the change, not just make it, but be the change. So how could I say no?
Yeah. Do you remember up front? I'm so interested to know what you'll say. Do you remember up front, what do you remember as one of the bigger challenges, or as we were starting this going, what? This is a thing we're confronting right now? Do you remember any of the challenges of starting the project, or is it drowned out by the administrative, trying to get the project up on its feet, or is there something you remember, a specific challenge?
Gosh, well, I mean, certainly there is so much over the years in trying to keep things going and keeping it on its feet. I mean, that first year was interesting, I think, because most of those girls that were in the project knew each other and knew me because I had filled in for um, Alberto Labralazzo at Scapa. So we had a lot of Scapa girls that year because I had directed for a couple of years at Scapa. And so one of the challenges I was kind of surprised by, I think, in the beginning, is actually dealing with the fact that most of those girls knew each other, and they already had some weird social dynamics going on. And my daughter was in that year too. And knowing that there were weird social dynamics just because I was her mother, so that was all very, I wasn't sure how that was going to end up. And it surprised me at the very beginning. I've got a hair in my face. Gosh, stop. I'm going to start all over again. not all over, but I'm going to pick back up. So, sorry, it was driving me crazy. So I was talking about the challenge of the social dynamics with that first year, and certainly each year we've had our own a different set of social dynamics. But I think probably that first year was the year that we had so many people that knew each other. So kind of navigating that, and then obviously our first hint into what these girls were experiencing was a challenge. And I remember, do you remember that first year when we did an exercise from the representation project? We utilized their literature quite a bit in that first year. And we did that exercise where they had to list role models. And do you remember number one, if it was like a politician or somebody in history, it was a man. And number two, if it wasn't a man, it was a pop star.
Right.
They literally could not, it wasn't the first thing that came to their head until we started bringing up people, until we started mentioning, Gloria Steinem. They couldn't, it wasn't within their way of thinking. And I remember being so surprised by that.
Mm.
And what's also interesting is thinking about it now is I remember several people brought up Taylor Swift. And I remember thinking to myself, oh, that is just so ridiculous. But then Taylor Swift really has, she's started to she's doing some really great things, and she's doing the work right now.
She's growing up just like our girls were. I think we both were like, if another girl says Taylor Swift, what is this? And now I love listening to her music. And, she's grown up. She was growing up too. Yeah.
She has. So yeah, those are some of the challenges I remember at the very beginning. And of course, the challenge of I'm not sure what we're doing here. Let's just trust in the process and hope for the best.
Oh gosh, and saying we're going to produce a show at the end of this and we're going to have a script, and we had no idea what we set ourselves up for. I mean, that was brave. So there were definitely challenging moments. I can think of a million more, and the ones you bring up, but over the past 8 years that we've been doing it, is there something that stands out to you as a favorite moment or something? Yeah, I'll leave it there. A favorite moment.
Well, there are so many, so many. And my two passions in life intersect. When they intersect, that's the most beautiful moments that I can think of, because they're the two most important things to me. And that is the Girl Project and this work that we're doing now, Voices Amplified, and my family. So there are two specific moments that bring me so much joy. I get giddy when I think about it, that when they intersected. One is Emma wrote when the first time she wrote her panda piece. So this panda piece that I framed for her for Christmas one year. Like, she gets panda gifts all the time. This is how important this piece is for me. And other people actually have gifted her, other people in the family, because that piece was just such, it was so powerful and what Emma needed at that place and time. And one of our guest artists, Caroline Harvey, wrote with the girls, and it was kind of a piece to your younger self, but she wanted you to embody an animal, or nature in some way. And Emma chose a panda, and she went through all of the middle school things that you go through, but specifically, going through that pudginess that you go through, like in 6th grade. And I think she struggled emotionally with all of that. And so she talked about being a joyful panda and eating bamboo and loving the skin. Like if you think about a panda, they're just kind of jovial and comfortable, and they're cute and round and eating their bamboo and they don't care.
Yeah.
And so she talked about, talking to her younger middle school self, that fifth, sixth grade self, about, just enjoy eating your bamboo and enjoy life. And it's just such a sweet piece. And throughout the years for different events and whatnot, I've asked her to read it, and it gets to me every single time because I know what it did for her. And so I know that our work does that for so many other girls. And I, got to witness it firsthand for Emma.
Yeah.
The second one is, with having a teenage boy during the years of the Girl Project, I think it's been challenging at times for my son, and it's actually opened up a lot of conversations over the years. Being the son of the co-founder of the Girl Project, and just even the questions he gets asked,
Yeah.
um, and I think that maybe, I don't know that it was resentment, but I think that over the years, there's definitely been this, well, this is a big, big thing that my mom does. And I think that there's some kind of stigma, which is crazy. I understand it, but there's a stigma with the Girl Project that, we're man haters when, as we talk about, Ellie and Vanessa love men.
They do.
I don't know what
And
you're
Jenny,
talking about.
Margaret, and everybody likes men. Yes.
We all love, yeah, Jenny, Margaret, they do, we love men. But so I think that there's that perception that, I was always kind of working against and talking with him. And so I talked about the Representation Project before. They released a documentary called The Mask You Live In, which is all about masculinity and the mask that men have to wear and the expectations that are placed on men to be a certain way, and think about their, the misogyny being passed down. And so we hosted The Mask You Live In, and it was on my son's birthday. And he was none too pleased about it. And I honestly, I wanted to do that. Like I wanted for him to know how important that we brought this documentary in was. And so we watched the documentary together, and he was a little disgruntled, but then about midway through the documentary, he reached over and he grabbed my hand with tears in his eyes. And, there was a specific section that was just kind of talking about relationships, and it really affected him in a profound way. And that was that was joyful for me, because once again, getting a little insight into a teenage boy and how our work was affecting him made me know that it could be affecting other people in the same way.
Hmm. Are there any setbacks in particular that taught you big lessons in our work? I know there are. Are there any you're willing to talk about? Like any project over 8 years, we've learned a lot of lessons, and we've been lucky, I think, to have confronted some of the really scary things we confront with our girls. And working with a plethora of artists. Voices Heard has worked with over 100 artists in Kentucky. So you're interacting with a lot of different people and a lot of different creative ideas, and people who have really strong opinions about how things should be or how things should go. Is there any big setback or moment that you can think of that taught you a really big lesson?
There's a lot of them, certainly. Definitely the most difficult moment involved Voices Heard. I think we in our work that we do, we have to approach the material from several different angles. In the past, we've been attached to different theaters, and the different theaters, their missions might not necessarily align with our mission. And until recently, now that we are gaining our independence and we can follow our own mission,
Mhm.
this is we are in a new genre now. Genre isn't the right word. We are in a new era. So I think that we can take a lot of the lessons that we've learned, but it has certainly been challenging over the years to know that not only our girls, but also our artists that are involved in Voices Heard, they have very specific ideas of the topics that they would like to tackle. And because of our attachment to other organizations who have helped us, we have had to be careful about certain topics. Here in Lexington, Kentucky, and Central Kentucky, there's certain topics that are pretty red hot issues. Let's just say. So I have learned that I need to gain a better understanding of the angles that everyone out there who's trying to do the work, they are having to look at all different angles that I may not even know about. Like I would have no idea about.
Mhm.
And I have learned that it is really, really important to lift each other up. Like there's a lot of people out there who are doing the work and doing it well. And how can we, if there's a challenge that arises, how can we lift those people up? How can we get behind them? And how can we help them? Because they might be facing challenges that we're just not even aware of because of all the dynamics that come into play. So I learned a lot about collaboration, lifting people up, and supporting each other. And I've also learned, okay, I think it's time that we really have to pursue our own mission.
Right. And we are.
Yes, we
We're
are.
doing it. Is there anything you've instilled or tried to instill in our girls, um, uh, in our participants over the past 8 years that you're still trying to instill for yourself? Like the do as I say, not as I do thing. Are there lessons that are still hard for you from your learned experience?
Yes, unproductive self-talk. So we have a rule with our participants called the ouch rule, and that's where you can say ouch if, let's say, somebody says something that bothers you or offends you. You can say ouch for me, and it's just kind of a easy breezy way to bring up, hey, what you said maybe kind of hurt me a little bit. But there's also the ouch rule for yourself. So if I heard Ellie, say something about herself, oh, I look fat in these jeans or whatever, I can say ouch for Ellie, because there's really no need for that kind of self-deprecating talk. And I've learned so much from preaching that, and I catch myself all the time, all the time. And that is the biggest thing, the biggest takeaway from our work, of something that I continue to do and always have to keep myself in check for.
Yeah, I don't think in our work, well, I'll say I don't think in your work in particular, people see your vulnerability a lot. I don't think a lot of women would hear what you just said and be surprised. I think all of us talk about something we deeply understand and are never surprised to hear, is that kind of talk about oneself. And I shouldn't just say women. I think men have different kind of talk that
Sure.
that they talk and wish they didn't say about themselves. But I don't think people see your vulnerability a lot. I think that goes along with people's expectations of the Girl Project and now Voices Amplified. they're hoping for a beacon of light, and then they learn, oh, you're real people too. There's real people running this thing. So if you were to say, I have this vulnerability that people don't see or that isn't revealed about me a lot, is there one that people would be surprised to hear about?
Well, over the years and being a leader in various positions, whether it be education, artistic, or as a director, I have to talk a lot. I have to, get up, introduce, speak about things. And I'm always concerned that I'm not smart enough and that what I have to say isn't important. So that's a big vulnerability that I have. If I'm up, working with my students, um, sometimes I'm talking and I will just think in my head, wow, do they really want to hear what I have to say? And I know they do, or they wouldn't keep coming back, but it's like, um, and I feel that way a lot. I felt that way a lot in our work because we are learning so much from this incredible tribe we've created through our work. With the Girl Project and, now Voices Amplified, we have so many intelligent people that have so much to share. And sometimes I'm just like, oh, I'm not sure that I can articulate that like they can. And I just think I'm trying to come to terms with, I can articulate it, but I can articulate it in the way I articulate it. And, there are going to be people that relate to the way I speak versus, like Dr. Margaret McGladrey, who is just unbelievably, like she brings so much to our work. And Jenny brings so much to our work. She's so intelligent. You bring so much to our work. And so I always am questioning, maybe Vanessa, maybe you shouldn't speak anymore.
Ouch for
Ouch for Vanessa.
Vanessa.
I know.
You definitely should speak. That makes me think about people's perceptions of us. And I think people definitely have a perception of people in leadership roles, which I think you're right. It's you a lot. And I think people think, okay, Vanessa makes shit happen. That's why people sent you, I think, to Trish Clark, because it's like, well, Trish Clark will make shit happen. Just go tell her who you are. And you have a lot of those qualities. You make things happen. You have ideas. You make them happen. But do you think people have a different perception of you than that? Or do you think people's perceptions of who you are correct? And what do you think they get wrong about you?
I definitely think that people know that I'm a person that makes shit happen, sometimes to my own detriment. um, I think that people see me as a fairly, positive person and strong-willed but positive. And I am for the most part. I think there's a side of me that not everybody sees, and that I struggle with anxiety. I didn't know I struggled with anxiety until about 5 years ago, and I think everybody does to some degree, to be honest. But I really struggle with it, and uh, I have a lot of things I'm afraid of. I think sometimes people think that I'm super brave, and while I think I am in some regards, um, I'm, I have a lot of anxiety and fear, and have lots of fearful, dark thoughts. And I have, for a very, very long time, so ever since I can remember. And some of that has to do with just some things that I experienced as a kid with going to a couple different schools, and I had some super super over the top preaching from Revelations teachers. That's kind of all they really like to talk about revelations all the time. So I've been waiting for the end of the world for a long time, until, the past probably 15 years or so, when I kind of got over that hump. But yeah, there's just some really deep-seated fears that I work against a lot.
That surprises me.
Hmm.
What, like, what scares you the most, the most?
It, it it goes back to it goes back to what I experienced when I was a kid, and it's the end of the world. It's not my death. It's the whole, like, all of it just ending. Um, and because I have this deep-seated fear, I literally, in the fifth grade, I went to a Christian school for a little bit, and I had a teacher that all she did was preach from Revelations. She was convinced that the world was going to end within the next few years, and she would sit there and talk about it with fifth graders constantly.
Wow.
And then I had an art teacher in high school who did the same thing. And this wasn't at a Christian school. This was just at a regular public school. So I spent probably most of my high school years, I had to sleep with the TV on because of those fears. Like, and even up to, like, when the year 2000 happened, like, I went
Yeah.
through a little bit again then. I even went through a tiny little bit during 2012. I had pretty bad anxiety, deep-seated anxiety from that. So I've
What are
gone
you
through,
referring to in 2012?
because if wasn't it 2012, like, there was, like, the Mayan calendar came
Oh.
to an end. Yeah, I was waiting for that
So
too.
that would lead me to the pandemic that we're currently in. Speaking of someone who is trying to overcome this learned fear of the end coming, how have you been coping during the pandemic, with all the changes? If you want to talk about some of the changes, but has it been boiling back up?
No, actually, that's how I know that I am doing better. I've
Mm.
had more anxiety about health, my own personal health, my family's health, but somehow it's like this kind of thing is so real. It's so real that I've gone into this, okay, well, let's just deal with reality mode.
Mhm.
Um, so I think in the other times it was so far-fetched, that the end was nigh or whatever. Not that I'm saying with the pandemic that I think, like, the end is coming. I've become much more scientific, um, and more spiritual, but more scientific.
Mm.
So I'm much more in tune with my true spirituality now. So now everything has maybe become a little more personal about my personal health and my personal spirituality. So I think my anxiety has definitely gone more into trying to take care of my health, which has been good. And yes, there's been a lot of changes since the pandemic, shut down the theater and I was furloughed. I've done a lot of examining of my life, and decided that I didn't want to continue on with that theater specifically, but that there was other work that I really wanted to do, and I also really wanted to focus on myself and
Mm.
get myself to a healthy place. And I it's become such a habit for me now that I don't want to go back to the kind of schedule I was leading before, where I took absolutely no time for myself. I mean, I tried to exercise, but it didn't happen. Trying to being constantly on the go and feeding your body the right food is impossible. And I've become now really guarded about that time to take care of myself. And I don't think I was going to slow down enough to realize what was happening until this pandemic happened. So I feel really fortunate that I have a super supportive husband and who is willing to take these leaps of faith with me. And he realized that my physical and mental health had to come first. And so that once he articulated that he felt that that had to come first, I was like, well, I'm going to carve out some different ideas for my career then. And so I've been dealing with the pandemic by taking care of myself.
Mm.
And trying to figure out how to navigate working at home. And at first that was really hard. And I'm an extrovert, but I'm starting to be a little introverted now. And I do. I mean, I miss people, and I miss like hugging, and I love to sit in a coffee shop and talk for hours, and I love to go out to dinner and drink wine and talk, and I love that so much. And of course, I love live theater. So I miss all of it, but I have made some really positive changes during this time.
So what, with all these changes, is there anything that still keeps you up at night, or it makes you? Yeah.
Oh
The
yeah.
answer is yes. For those listeners, you didn't just see your face. If you're watching YouTube, you did. What's keeping you up at night now?
There are several things that are keeping me up at night. One thing, maybe a little guarded about, but one thing that keeps me up at night is I'm still kind of figuring out my new path. And, I think that some people are resistant to change and understanding that people move on and have other things they need to do. So that kind of keeps me up at night, because I've been so ingrained in a certain work life for several years. So I think about that a lot. I think about my new path and the new things that I want to do. And I mean, all of the COVID, just all of the COVID, it keeps me up at night. I'm worried. I'm worried about my parents. I'm worried about my kids who are mostly independent now, and they're trying to make ends meet, and they have to do work that involves being around, my son specifically has to do work that involves being around a lot of people, and he's super careful and getting tested all the time. But they are around my parents, and I mean, so that keeps me up. That keeps
Yeah.
me up at night. And I would be lying if I said that I really, I'm not like living in fear of COVID, but I don't want to get it. It's like I'm making all of these health strides, and but I'm also trying to just relax about it, because I got to keep doing things. I'm still working with students. I'm super careful, but you know, got to keep living. I got to keep doing the things. So
Yeah.
those are the two big things that keep me up.
What makes you laugh so hard and uncontrollably that it's that it's embarrassing? We all have those moments where you're like, if somebody saw me right now, they would think this person's crazy.
Okay, so what I'm going to say is so generic, and people are going to be like, really? But I am like a teenage boy when it comes to like fart jokes. Like, I think they're so funny. Like,
Really?
farting.
I didn't know that.
Like, if people talk about like stinky poop or farts, I think it's funny. I mean, you can't, like, if I'm watching some show and they talk about fart or like stinky poop, I can't help it. It's like, it's embarrassing that I think it's so funny, but I think it's so funny.
That's the last thing I expected you to say.
So my son is disgusting.
Oh, he's going to appreciate this.
My
Great.
son is disgusting. But there's things that he says that make me laugh so hard, and they're such teenage boy things. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, but it's true.
That's
It's
funny.
true. Like, I'm not really big into like dick jokes or anything, but I like fart jokes.
Yeah. There you go. So what makes you feel safe? Like truly held? Is it a person? Is it like a meditation? Is it being with people you love? What makes you feel really held and weightless, maybe? The idea of
There are three things actually. So, and you mentioned really kind of all of them, but meditation does. And I just probably in the past 5 or 6 years have gotten, very heavily into meditation, and it's helped me so, so much with the anxiety.
Mm.
So if you don't meditate and you're anxious, it's the thing. For many people, friends and connection with like true friends, friends that you can go months, years without talking to, and then you get together and it's like no time has passed. That makes me feel so safe and good. And I mean, my husband is such a good hugger. He's such a good hugger. And you wouldn't think that about him because he's such an introvert, or an extrovert rather. No, introvert. Wow.
Introvert.
Whew. He's such an introvert.
Mhm.
And he is not someone who's like big into going for the hug or anything like that. But if he wants to hug you, he hugs you. In fact, it was maybe our second or third date, and we moved very slow. And he hugged me, like really hugged me. And that was when I was like, this might be something, because this person knows how to really hug me and hold me. And every morning when I get up, without fail, he hugs me that way every single morning. Every morning.
Ugh. Can I tell a secret?
Yeah.
It's Eric was in your phone, not as Eric, and maybe still is in there as the librarian.
Yeah, he was there, but no, he's not anymore.
And, you had just had a divorce from this, I mean, epitome of an extrovert, right? In so many ways. And then you start dating the librarian. And I remember meeting Eric for the first time. And, you said you're like, okay, this person, I don't know if he's my type. I don't know. I said the same things about Evan. Spencer, my best friend, said some really funny things about Evan when we first started dating, but watching your transformation with this personality type that is Eric, and his gentleness and his, he is an introvert, but he's really funny and he loves to talk. Like maybe he feels drained by once he's done talking to me, but he really is such a giving, caring person. And just watching your all's relationship, but I get so tickled that he was the librarian for that
The
period
librarian.
of time.
Yeah. Yep.
It makes librarian sound so sexy.
I think it was, or it might have been library man. I'm pretty sure it was the library man.
Wilderness man, library man. That's so funny. I think this goes into meditation and what you were talking about with meditation and revelations. And I think our work, because we're out of control a lot of what's coming next and how things are going to unfold. What makes you feel out of control, and how do you, like, what happens to you and your physical person when you feel that way, and how do you find your way back from it?
When there's so many things going on that I can't get a grasp on it, and when I don't know everything that's going on, that's when I feel out of control. And then I rely on my lists. I start making a list and I check it off and journal and just try to pull everything in on paper. And I've tried as many times as I have tried, and I'm still trying, by the way, with the Trello organization board and Slack and all of this kind of stuff. I still am so old school, and I just have to put it on paper, or I cannot get it together. And so when there's so many things going on, everything's whirling around, that's when I can't function. I literally cannot function. And so I have to take the time, I have to take the stillness to just write it all down. And so that's how I get a grasp on it. And if I don't, then I get the anxiety and my body starts, you know, my heartbeat gets faster and I have trouble breathing and all of that kind of stuff. So that's it. And I'm finding now, the more I take time for meditation and yoga, that just helps everything in my life, because I am just like going, focusing
Mm.
it all in. And I didn't realize how much of just kind of, as Jenny likes to use the term, chaos Muppet I was. Like, I was loving chaos, like living the life of chaos, so glamorous. And the pandemic hit, and I'm like, how will I ever survive not living the life of a chaotic Muppet?
Yeah.
I am really enjoying it.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot to say about that, but I think artists unfortunately get the chaos agent type stereotype a lot, because we're right-brained or left-brained, people put that on artists. But I'm like, what other people don't experience is having to do a job without an office, with very low pay, juggle 15 jobs at once, without a stable environment, workspace, trying to generate work for themselves while completing the work, while another project is coming up. And I think this happens in everyone's jobs, but I don't think artists quite get enough credit for the amount of creative material they have to generate on top of doing the very left brain skills of administrating, starting, completing projects and project management, and the number of projects you have to keep in the air to even make a living
Yes.
doing what we do. So I don't think it's that you enjoyed the chaos. I think once you're used to living a certain way, the change is hard and the halt is hard. Hard. The halt is hard. So I have a lot of respect for you, even in your chaos, for the load you're managing at any given moment, because you're trying to change people's lives with this thing you love. Anyway, so do you have any regrets? Do you have any regrets?
I don't know that I have. I try not to use the word regret, because I'm a firm believer that, everything happens for a reason, or that there are certain things that happen. The universe is like, oh, we're going to shift you this way. So I try not to think about it as regret, but, I would say that, so I got, and this isn't news to her, so I can say it, but, Emma was kind of a, oops. um, so, I definitely, I wanted to have kids without a doubt. Like, I've always wanted to have kids. That's never been something that, I was not interested in. And I knew I wanted to have kids by the time I was 30, because I have pretty young parents. And I loved that. Like, I loved that my parents were so young, and even now as grandparents of two adults, they're relatively young. So I don't want it to sound like I didn't want to have a child, but if that had not happened, when it did, I think I definitely maybe would have gone on more of a performance track. You know, I was in Chicago. I had just been cast at a season down in Hilton Head. And I was pretty excited about it. And, you know, my ex-husband at the time, we were, you know, both of us were ready to kind of really launch our acting careers. And yeah, and then, you know, the surprise happened. And so I wouldn't say regret. I would be interested to know, had that not happened in that time, you know, would I have, you know, done an acting career for a while? I think I ultimately would have ended up as an educator regardless. I think that's deep seated inside of me. But I'm just curious how that would have branched off, had that not happened.
Yeah.
I love you, Emma. I'm so glad
We love you, Emma.
that you happened.
Yeah. There's, yeah. Yeah. What, speaking of careers, what do you think is going to happen when theaters open back up? How do you see things unfolding? I mean, so much has changed during this pandemic. I joke that we're going to have a lot of devised theater pieces and masks, but particularly in the midst of a civil rights uprising happening during a pandemic, during an incredibly important election, the things we've experienced over the past 10, 12 months with everything shutting down, are you worried about theater in particular? I feel like film and TV is always going to find a way. It is just a big money market. But theater is so essential and so important. What do you see happening as we move forward? I know you've been working with Teach. So maybe you can talk a little bit about that too, because you've been actively working with them to kind of set Lexington up for how theater is reopening and reconsidering.
Yes. Well, there's so many levels to this, but, you know, certainly I think that I'm worried. You know, I'm certainly worried for theater. You know, Broadway too is definitely a money machine, but it's so different than film and TV. And so starting from the top there, I think that I'm worried about Broadway, and I love to go to New York and see shows. I absolutely love it. I think that Broadway has maybe lost its way a little bit in terms of the production value just being so high. So the ticket prices are astronomical. I think Broadway, I hope, is re-examining their structure as well, because it needs to be, all theater needs to be more accessible. And at this point it's going to be a real struggle, because all of the theaters, they're not all, but most theaters don't have any money that they're just sitting on. You know, they're going to have to get that money. The government is going to have to figure out a way to help the theaters and help artists so that we can continue. And once that happens and theaters reopen, there has got to be a new accountability for equity and inclusion, but also accessibility. Because in that equity and inclusion, we're not just talking about BIPOC artists having a place in the season and in your boardroom, but we're also talking about BIPOC patrons and people being able, even artists, like, we can't afford to go see shows either, right? And some you know, some companies, I know, like Athens West here in town, and I'm I really appreciate the fact that, they have those pay what you can nights. And I really think it's important that theaters find a way to at least have one night during their run where it's pay what you can, because accessibility has got to be there. As far as there's a lot of work to be done in terms of equity and inclusion. The teach team is theater for, I came up with the name and I have trouble remembering it. Theater for Equity, Accountability, Community, and Healing. And that was put together. A woman named April Schultz, who is the artistic director of, I think it's called Vagabond Players. She had just put a call out saying that she wanted to do something. And so she kind of started that. And then a few of us chimed in, and then, more people started chiming in, and it ended up, we were having these weekly meetings, and it ended up being about 7 of us who were always going to the meetings. So that's kind of become like the teach team. So we each have kind of our own little areas that we're focusing on. Mine is finding resources to educate theaters on equity and inclusion. And part of what Teach is going to be trying to do, we've already held a panel discussion with 5 different BIPOC artists, and just the panel discussion was involving, just things that they've experienced over the years in Central Kentucky, and just kind of paving the way for where the work needs to start. And so one of the things that Teach is working on is a contract that basically theaters in the area will agree to be held accountable for. So that's being worked out right now. The next panel discussion we're going to do is how this all has to start at the top with boards, and that there must be representation on the board. That if you're not starting at the top, then you might as well not start. So I know that that's going to be the next panel discussion, and then they'll kind of trickle down from there. So the goal of Teach is to have these discussions and open forums, and then we have Navy Dixon, who's in the group, she's going to be the accountability, like kind of like a stage manager of accountability, where she's going to go in and she's going to check in with companies and make sure that the accountability standards are being met. And then my function will be to make sure that those companies have those resources. And then some of the other people are doing marketing, and Jessica Green is kind of the head of the Teach team. So I'm really excited about all of the possibilities for Teach. And I think that all theater communities, they're going to have to do something like that, because there's definitely, I think, a reckoning happening right now. And it's our responsibility across the board to hold each other accountable.
Yeah, it's really important work.
Yes.
I'm really excited it's happening in Kentucky.
Me too.
So what are you reading right now or working on to better yourself or to keep yourself grounded?
Well, I'm reading right now. I just started Untamed based on several people's recommendation. But prior to that, I was reading the book Younger Next Year, because in March, I'm about to hit a very large birthday, and it's hard for me to even articulate that number. So
it's not a very large birthday. It's a maybe like a landmark birthday, but by very large, you make it sound like an astronomical number, which it is not. Anyway, continue.
Anyway, so I just don't want to say what the number is, because to hear it come out of my mouth is just nauseating. So knowing that, that was coming. I picked up this book called Younger Next Year, and apparently there's several different versions of it, but this one is specifically for women. And I really found it so interesting, and it was really life-changing. It just so happened that I started reading it around pandemic time, and it just kind of got my ass in gear, to be honest. And it just talks about how if you if you don't exercise like every day, that you are basically telling your body to decay. And it just and that sums up the book, and it treats it with a lot of humor and all of that, but it just everything that starts to happen when you hit middle age, you know, all of the things, the blood pressure, the weight gain, the hormones, that all of those things can be helped by taking care of yourself and exercising. They do talk about food and eating and all of that, but it's more focused on exercise. So I really committed somewhere in mid-August to that exercising every day. And even if it's just like a half hour, they say try to at least get 45 minutes in every day. And so I've committed to that. And there's maybe been just a couple days like Christmas Day, I didn't exercise, just, but it's given me a nice boost in my mood.
Mm.
I'm noticing muscles that I've never been this consistent about weight training since college. And I'm like, oh, what is that? I've got a muscle. Oh my God. And even my kids are like, Mom, what is that muscle? I'm like, that's called consistency. And I have written on my chalkboard in my kitchen cabinets are painted with chalkboard, and I have written on my chalkboard, consistency is everything. And I look at that every single day to remind myself, just be consistent, just be consistent. Food is always a challenge. I think I've always struggled with food being my drug. Also, I do really like wine, and I've really slowed way down on wine. And I've eliminated a lot of things from my diet, and I've been consistent with it. Like, I've not deprived. Like, if it's once a week and I want some wine, or I want a little bit of cheese or a little bit of bread, I will do it maybe once a week. But I'm just trying to be consistent as I can. And I finally feel like I'm making progress at a time where, when you're in middle age, they're like, well, it's damn near impossible to lose weight. And so that's all I've been kind of programming myself, just saying, oh, well, it's impossible to lose weight. So why even try? But I'm making progress. I'm not there yet. And, I'm about halfway there, but I'm definitely making progress. So that's really exciting to me. I definitely recommend the book
Such a
Younger
great title.
Next Year. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I especially, I think that people, once you get over 50 or whatever, you're just like, well, I can't do any of that now because I don't want to hurt my back. And I am someone who experiences a lot of different back pain. And since I've been regular about and consistent with all of this, guess what I'm not having? I mean, I'm having this soreness like in my shoulders from lifting weights and stuff, but as far as the lower back pain, I'm not having it.
Mm.
So, and I'm sure I will. I'm sure, it doesn't mean that every single day of your life you're going to be feeling fantastic every day of your life, but it definitely, I think it has enhanced my life.
I can't remember where I read this, but someone said somewhere, if you work out really fucking hard for 15 to 30 minutes every day during your day and you give it 100% of what you have, then you can finish saying, well, that's probably going to be the hardest part of my day today.
Mm,
Right?
mhm.
Anything else I'm going to be able to do because that was all I had to give. That's
Yeah.
a huge generalization for, people dealing with some pretty challenging stuff right now, but it does make sense in a day to day. You can give yourself, if I can make this happen right now, then I can surely make a few other things happen that I've been struggling to make happen. So I love that. What's the best piece of advice you've ever been given?
I giggle about it because I can't help but think of the person who said it and his demonstration of it. So, Stephen Kennedy, who is the choreographer for iTheatrics in New York, I've had the privilege of getting to have some really nice quality time with him when I went for my week in New York for the Freddie G Fellowship. And Stephen, he does this little gesture where he's got his his elbow and his hands together, kind of in almost like a praying pose, and then he opens them up so it's here, and then of course, wait, he does jazz hands, I believe, because he does everything with jazz hands. But so it's like, and so the gesture goes along with these words: boundaries are freeing. So I was having a conversation with him over dinner just about, how I had literally just become the artistic director for Woodford Theater. And, I'd already talked to him about how, my whole life was just, the theater, and, I was going to go into this and trying to figure out how to navigate, working through different dynamics. And he talked to me about boundaries being freeing. And I wish I wish that I had been given that advice years and years ago, because I think I've struggled in my life setting up boundaries. And it isn't until approaching this milestone age that I finally feel like I think that I'm figuring out this boundary thing. Like, I'm saying to myself, okay, this amount of time is for you today. I don't want to do this kind of work anymore, so I'm going to do this kind of work. And if it's going to be a struggle, it's going to be a struggle, because I'm going to set up a boundary right here about I'm not going to spend this money on this because it's not important. I would rather do the work I want to do and not spend money on this stuff that I don't need so that I can do the work that I want to do.
Mm.
So setting up boundaries literally does just free you up of a lot of things that weigh you down. So thank you, Stephen Kennedy. Boundaries are freeing.
It's like structure with artists, right? When you're
Yes.
creating, if you just put a bunch of artists, actors on stage and say, go,
Mhm.
giving them some structure can really free them to, yeah, it's
Absolutely.
so important. If you could have one billboard across America, everywhere, what would it say?
It would say it's not about you, it's about us. And that goes goes for so many aspects of life. I use that phrase all the time in Tech Week, when I'm directing a show,
Mhm.
especially when I'm working with young people, but adults too. Um, when I've got a line of 15 teenagers saying this costume and this and this and this and this and this piece and this set piece and this blah, blah, blah. And I just have to stop and just say, okay, write it down, write it down, make sure it gets to the stage manager. This is great. And what do we remember about Tech Week, friends? It's not about you, it's about the collective us. And I think that the whole world could really learn from that we are a collective of people, and we are, sharing the earth together, and we're responsible for each other, and we're responsible for it, and it's not about you, it's about us.
Nice. Wear the damn mask.
Yeah, it's not about you, it's about us. Wear the damn mask. Thank you.
Over your nose. Um, what I think this is the hardest question. What is your superpower?
It is a hard it's a hard question, and we're asking all of our guests, so you have
Everyone is
to
gonna.
answer it. Oh, I think, my tattoo says
Mm,
she persisted. Um, and that's kind of, I think that's my superpower is perseverance. Not that I've had I've had a lucky life. I've had a good life, you know, but I've had some challenges without a doubt in my life, as we all have. And I think that I've done pretty well persevering through those challenges. And I, when faced with a challenge, I I used to back away from it. And now I just put my head down, and not in like a down this way. I mean, I like put my nose to the ground and just plow and just it's like if I were to picture me being a superhero and like all of the wind is blowing all around me and I'm putting my nose down to the ground and I'm just walking through it. It's all the chaos is going around and I'm just going and I am persevering. So yes, I would say that's what I like to think my superpower is just keep going, just keep swimming, just keep
Mhm.
swimming.
Yeah. So this is our campfire moment.
Yay.
Um, I think Vanessa wants little crackling fire sounds. Don't we all? I want marshmallows to roast. But our campfire segment is something we wanted to create as we are artists and we focus on art and storytelling. But it's a moment to share inspiration with our listeners and selfishly with us as the co hosts. The campfire represents storytelling in an intimate setting, which is what we love. In our activism work, we do something called the closed container or circling, and it is our safe space where most of the time the stories begin for our girls, the hard stories, the fun stories, the bang on the drums, sing the dinging bowl, grab the Kleenex. So it's moment for celebration, reflection, hurt. But we want to invite our guests to share some of their own work or the work of someone else that they hold as inspiration. So, Vanessa, what will you be sharing with us today?
So today I'm going to share the beautiful poem written by Maya Angelou, phenomenal woman. And this just holds a special place in my being for several reasons. One is that we used it, I think, the second year of the Girl Project. And then we've also used it in other instances through Voices Heard. And this this poem makes me feel so empowered and beautiful. Like I talked about Miss Kitty's hot box in the beginning. That's kind of what this poem does for me. I think we all through life experience times where we're feeling less of our womanhood and we become, mom and boss and leader, and we forget who we are and the beauty that is womanhood. So I love this poem, and thank you, Maya Angelou, for this gift. Pretty women wonder where my secret lies. I'm not cute or built to suit a fashion model's size, but when I start to tell them, they think I'm telling lies. I say, it's in the reach of my arms, the span of my hips, the stride of my step, the curl of my lips. I'm a woman, phenomenal woman. That's me. I walk into a room just as cool as you please, and to a man the fellows stand or fall down on their knees. Then they swarm around me, a hive of honeybees. I say, it's the fire in my eyes and the flash of my teeth, the swing in my waist and the joy in my feet. I'm a woman, phenomenally phenomenal woman. That's me. Men themselves have wondered what they see in me. They try so much, but they can't touch my inner mystery. When I try to show them, they say they still can't see. I say, it's in the arch of my back, the sun of my smile, the grace of my style. I'm a woman, phenomenally, phenomenal woman. That's me. Now you understand just why my head's not bowed. I don't shout or jump about or have to talk real loud. When you see me passing, it ought to make you proud. I say, it's in the click of my heels, the bend of my hair, the palm of my hand, the need for my care. 'Cause I'm a woman, phenomenally, phenomenal woman. That's me.
It's one of my favorites too. Yeah, we did it in 2014. She passed away that year, right?
Yeah.
And we did it in honor of her. Our girls did a movement piece with it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks
It's
for
rough.
sharing that. Yeah. So to close up, I am going to ask you some rapid response questions.
Yay. This makes me feel like I'm on Actor Studio.
I
Wait.
know, with James Lipton. Oh, the
Yes.
dream. Wow, I
I've
wish.
made it. I've made it.
You made it. You get the Lipton questions. And I know that we've interviewed Jenny and Margaret, so it's really fun to hear our different responses, and we've surprised each other in ways with these. This is fun. Okay. Vanessa Becker Weig, what is your guilty pleasure?
I really like Love Actually and could watch it every day, 50 times a day.
What's your favorite? What, did you want to say something more?
No.
It's the accent, right?
It is. I just love them so much. I love the Brits. They can do no wrong.
I know. What's your favorite sound?
A really good, hearty laugh, like someone who's laughing so hard they can't catch their breath.
If you were to have a disclaimer, what would it say?
This one is hard. Um, Ignore the resting bitch face. I have that sometimes if I'm concentrating really hard. I know I do.
So funny. If you could choose another profession, what would it be?
Therapist.
What do you want said about you after you're gone?
She got shit done.
Great. Check. What would you be doing with your life if money was no issue?
Oh, I would be traveling. Oh, I would be in Greece. I would be in Italy the next week. Then I'd go over to Japan. I would just, yeah, I would be traveling if money and COVID weren't an issue. And that's the one thing that I'm most sad about, that I don't have money to do, is travel outside of the country.
Hmm. Who is the one person you think should be brought back from the dead?
I'm going to say it, Ruth Bader Ginsburg. I need her back. And not just, she inspires me in every way. I want, I want at the age that she was before she passed to be as strong as she was.
Choose one. Rom-com, documentary, action, or thriller?
Thriller. haunted thriller, please.
Why do you want to stay in haunted places? Why?
Okay, it goes back to my weirdness with the weird lady at the Christian school. It's about the knowledge and knowing that there are spirits and afterlives. Like I like the presence of ghosts. Like I like that.
But aren't you scared that invoking them or sleeping in a space that they might feel as their own will awaken the wrong spirit, and then you'll be like go crazy and crawl backwards on your, like, what's that? Or you'll wake up every night at like exactly 3:05 p.m. What are those terrifying movies where people got the wrong? Do you like Ouija boards?
I don't like Ouija boards. Because that is the wrong way to go about these things. There's a right way and a wrong way, and I'm not about the wrong way, which is like the Ouija board. But there's a right way of, being humble with spirits, and I'm just interested in, spotting, just getting a sense that they're there and saying hello. I am not about like calling them out through a Ouija board. In fact, my Jackson specifically has messed around with that, and I'm like, just don't do it. But
Especially
yeah,
for sport. Yes.
yeah. But I'm all about like yes, I am. In fact, one of Jackson's good friends, Kevin Laushi, his mom is a she has like ghost hunting equipment and stuff. And as soon as COVID is over, we're going ghost hunting together.
I mean, you'd like to go to bed and breakfasts that are haunted and sleep in a place where you could be awakened in the night.
Yes.
Oh,
Yes, I do. I just I don't know. There's something there's something comforting to me about it.
Wow. Is there anything we haven't talked about today that you want to talk about or that you feel like we've missed?
No, I think we're good.
Well, it's hard to wrap up this interview. I feel like I could talk to you for 6 more hours. I miss our time at bars with a glass of wine. I miss our time in our coffee shops. It's really hard to see you in Lexington and plan and sit 6 feet away and not be able to hug you every time I see you. And I want to just wrap up by saying it's an honor to have you as a friend and to create with you and to go on this next leg of our journey together with Voices Amplified. I think, like you said, with friends, just trust and unconditional love and respect are such valuable gifts. And you definitely give me that. And I feel like part of success in the arts, I think it's why people build ensembles, because you find the people that you want to do the work with.
Yeah.
It's not about it being perfect every time. And you were such a beautiful partner to be doing this with. And we joke all the time about our joint bank account and the gifts we give each other, but it is such a partnership and it requires such a devotion to another person, especially being as different as we are. I think a gift is our differences. So thank you for being such an inspiration to the project and to me and to all of Lexington, who I think people are dying to work with Vanessa Becker Weig, and get her in the room and have her involved. And you're a gift to the community. So thank you for being that.
Well, thank you. And I'm honored to receive all of that from you, because I feel very much the same way, and feel so incredibly lucky to be partnered with you on this.
Yeah. Okay. See you next time.
All right, everyone. Thanks for getting amped with us. If there are questions that we didn't ask that you want answered, be sure to send them our way. We are Voices Amped on Instagram and Facebook.
I don't think we have a Twitter, but there's 2 other ways that you can get in contact with us. So we'll be good, right? Voices Amped is part of the arts initiative Voices Amplified. You can check us out on our website at www.voicesamplified.net. Our team is Ellie Clark, Vanessa Becker Weig, me, Jenny Benavides, and Dr. Margaret McGladry, with production assistance by alumni and intern Kennedy Johnson. This podcast is possible in part due to a generous grant from the Kentucky Foundation for Women. We want to thank Lauren Rourke for the badass podcast art, Tiffany DuPont Novak for our Fierce Voices Amplified logo, and Vanessa Davis for our beautiful _ I'm doing okay. You can check out her music at Songwriter Vanessa on Instagram. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we hope to see you next week.
Voices Amped is generously sponsored by the Kentucky Foundation for Women. For more information about our guests, podcast content, or if you want to learn more about Voices Amplified, follow our advocacy work or support our 2021 Independence Campaign. You can visit our website voicesamplified.net or visit us on Facebook or Instagram. And remember, be curious, be courageous, take up space, and make some noise.